The Civil War has ended for 150 years on the territory of the United States of America that brought back the peace and human equality for its citizens. The bright side of the freedom in the black slaves was immortal. The country of the United States was truly united. And Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States during that time, has become the greatest monument of the country in the heart of its citizens for the country union and critically the abolition of slavery. Abraham Lincoln was born in February 12, 1809, in a one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. He was the son of Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln, who were both born in Virginia. In December 1816, Lincoln's father removed from Kentucky to the wilderness of Spencer County, Indiana, because of disputed titles to his Kentucky land. 2 years later, Abraham Lincoln's mother died, aged 34, because of milk sickness from the cows that ate wasp-neck roots, a poisonous plant found throughout Kentucky and Indiana at that time. The formal education of Abraham Lincoln during the childhood was so limited that he constantly had to work to support the family. But he made extraordinary efforts to learn and attain knowledge through books he could borrow. Though his father had the negative talks about him, called him lazy. Until 1830, at the age of 21, Lincoln's family once again moved to Macon County, Illinois, as soon as he decided to start his first job working on the river flatboat, hauling freight down the Mississippi River to New Orleans, and was hired to work as a shopkeeper and a postmaster. During the 1832 Black Hawk War, he met the man who would change his life in many ways, John Todd Stuart. Stuart and Lincoln both ran for the Illinois General Assembly, but Lincoln did not win. 2 years later, 1834, both men won the election. At the same time, Stuart, who was more spirited at skills of management and intrigue, showed Lincoln the ropes and loaned him law books that might help him study to become an attorney. Lincoln finally passed the bar examination in 1836 to be qualified to work as a lawyer, and was often hired by the Illinois Central Railroad. Lincoln, by the way, won the re-election to the General Assembly in 1836, 1838, and 1840. Among his accomplishments was a major role in getting the state capital moved to Springfield. In the same year, Lincoln met Mary Todd, who was 10 years younger than him, and got married on November 4, 1842. Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd had 4 children: Robert Todd, Edward Eddie Baker, William Willie Wallace, and Thomas Tad. But tragically, 3 of Lincoln's children died at a young age. Eddie died in 1850, Willie in 1862, and Tad in 1871, and only Robert could live to the adulthood. In 1846, Abraham Lincoln was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where he gave the infamous speech about the war that had begun with Mexico. The speech may have been a partisan maneuver to ingratiate himself with all the Whigs in Washington, because Lincoln was a Whig while Polk, the current president, was a Democrat. Popular opinion in most of the country supported the war, and newspapers around the country ridiculed him as Spotty Lincoln. He did not run for the election to the Congress in 1848, but his home district elected a Democrat instead of a Whig. He spent the next few years focusing on his law practice to support his family. In 1854, passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act allowed residents of any new states admitted to the Union to decide for themselves whether or not the state would be free of slaveholding. Like his father, Lincoln opposed slavery. However, he also did not expect abolitionist activities because they might encourage the division of the nation. At that time, the Whig Party was dying, replaced by a new party, the Republicans, in 1854, and Lincoln joined this party in 1856. In 1858, he engaged in a legendary series of debates across Illinois with Senior Stephen Douglas, the author of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and faced off over the issue of expanding slavery. On September 17, 1859, he had a speech in Ohio and delivered his opinion on the slavery issue in the 1850s. We must not disturb slavery in the states where it exists, because the Constitution and the peace of the country both forbid us. We must not withhold an efficient fugitive slave law, for the Constitution demands it, but we must, by a nation policy, prevent the spread of slavery into new territories or free states, because the Constitution does not forbid us, and the general welfare does demand such prevention. The attention to him spread out the country and resulted in the decision of the Republican Party that made him become the presidential candidate in the 1860 election, and Lincoln won every northern state in California and Oregon. He won 180 electoral votes compared to 123 for all his opponents combined to become the 16th President of the United States. The slave states feared that the Republicans would oppose the expansion of slavery. They feared losing the political power that protected slavery. In November 1860, the Confederate States was formed by the 7 slave states: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas, then followed by the other states in the April 1861. The Confederate Army led by General Robert Lee started firing on April 12, 1861, attacked Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. With the moment that the Civil War began, Abraham Lincoln had to issue a proclamation calling for 75,000 soldiers to suppress the Confederate rebellion, and 500,000 men were authorized in the Congress. On April 19, 1861, Lincoln issued the proclamation of blockade against Southern ports in order to limit the ability of the rural South to stay well supplied in its war against the industrial North. He appointed George McClellan to be in charge of the largest Union army, but then removed him for his being too cautious, then handed over the task to the General Ambrose Burnside before it was eventually in General Ulysses Grant's hand in March 1864. On September 17, 1862, by nightfall, 26,000 men were dead in the Battle of Antietam, Maryland, which became the bloodiest day in the U.S. military history. On January 1, 1863, President Lincoln issued the final Emancipation Proclamation that has become the critically historical event in the history of the United States, when it was declared to grant the permanent freedom to slaves, though it was to only those in the areas still in rebellion, which did not recognize his authority. At this time, Lincoln emphasized the enlisting of black soldiers in the Union Army. The war to preserve the Union now became a revolutionary struggle for the abolition of slavery. In the year of 1863, the Union Army had 2 important victories: the Battle of Vicksburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, that finally turned the tide of the war. In March 1864, Abraham Lincoln appointed General Grant to command all the armies of the United States. After 9 months surrounding and battling with the Confederate armies in Petersburg, Virginia, on April 9, 1865, General Robert Lee surrendered his armies to General Grant at the village of Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. The Union won the Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln gave a speech on the White House lawn on April 11, urging the audience to welcome the Northern states back into the fold. Tragically, Lincoln would not live to have carrying out his vision of Reconstruction. On April 16, 1865, the actor of the Confederate stage John Booth slid into the president box and shot the 16th U.S. President in the head at Ford's Theater in Washington. Lincoln was laid to rest in Springfield, Illinois. He died forever, but the brightful light he has brought to the freedom of slaves has been living eternally.